Okay, joining us right now, political commentator and former Democratic member of the South Carolina State House. Now you know I'm going to screw a bunch of stuff up. Bakari Sellers and Maura Gillespie, former advisor to then Speaker of the House, John Boehner. And there isn't a worse person for me to do something silly on air with than Bakari Sellers and Maura Gillespie, because they will make fun of me relentlessly. Let's start with Florida 6. Maura, what's the least and the most that you think you can read into this special today? Because special elections are special. Everyone's got an opinion on how much it can tell us about the future. What do you think?
One, I would never make fun of you on air, so let's just put that out there. Yes, there you go. And no, I think today, Cliff Stearns held this seat for many years with normally 70% of the vote on average, 65% of the vote. So to see the fact that we're even questioning this seat should be an alarm bell for Republicans, as what it comes down to is the issues, right? Voters are basically saying the issues that they voted for in November aren't being addressed right now. And so, and couple that with the fact that Randy Fine really kind of thought he had it in the bag up until a few weeks ago. That's why you're seeing, excuse me, these numbers. And I do think that Republicans need to pay attention to this. But the seats will be, I think the seats will both be won by Republicans. I'm not worried about that part, but the numbers will tell a story that I think the majorities are in question.
What do you think, Bakari? Can you read into, will you want to read into the outcome from, let's just stick with Florida 6, since that seems to be the one getting so much attention, into what it could mean for midterms that are still, it's not tomorrow. Midterms are not tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I don't take a whole lot of stock from special elections. I think people in and around DC oftentimes look at special elections as some type of predictor of the future, and that's just not the case. But I mean, this will have some impact on whether or not Republicans are able to pull some upset in the New Jersey governor's race, for example. It will foretell maybe what's going to happen in Virginia later this year. There will be some signs you can take, but at the end of the day, Maura was extremely correct. People voted for Donald Trump for two reasons. They voted so that he would close the southern border, and they voted so that he would lower the price of eggs. They didn't vote for all this other Elon Musk stuff and all the other charades that are going on in and outside of the White House. And so I think that's bogging down his message, but we'll see tonight. The one thing this will not impact is Donald Trump. He ain't gonna change for nobody because of any election. House Republicans may run away from him, but Donald Trump is going to be Donald Trump.
On the issue of Elon Musk, especially his influence in that Wisconsin judicial race, I mean, now the most expensive state judicial race like in history, there is an interesting take from the Political Playbook this morning. I wanted to review some reporting from J-Mart. Here's the reporting. Such is the concern Musk is causing among GOP representatives in competitive seats that some are praying for an early reckoning, J-Mart reports. An April 1st massacre would be a beautiful thing, one GOP lawmaker tells him, as it might help shuffle Musk toward the exit door well ahead of the midterms. Quote, Elon's work needs to wrap up and he needs to exit stage left. Another GOP lawmaker agrees, which is interesting. Is Elon Musk becoming a problem for Donald Trump? Bakari.
Oh, we were just sitting here waiting on you to call a name out. Yes, it is a problem for Donald Trump. I mean, we have stated that from the very beginning. I mean, Elon Musk is going to just outstay and overlive his welcome here. I mean, he's unelected. He has no accountability to anyone, and he's out there doing the job of legislators. And at the end of the day, when we come on air and continuously call him the Speaker of the House or the President of the United States, that wears thin on lawmakers, because Elon Musk is the one who's running the federal government right now. He's also running it into the ground. And so these cuts that you see, the fact that farmers aren't able to get subsidies, aren't able to sell their goods, those complaints come back to their members of Congress, not Elon Musk. And because he's not on the front line taking the brunt of the complaints, he's driving around Teslas and, making new babies every other week. He does not understand what's really going on out here in the streets, and that is going to wear thin quickly.
On that point, add to that, not on that point.
Well,
you want to jump in on that point? Donald Trump hinted yesterday, Maura, that Musk may have to may have to leave his duties as a special government employee, may have to go back to running his company full time, kind of ending his time with his mission at Doge. And here's what he said to reporters in the Oval Office. I think he's amazing, but I also think he's got a big company to run. And so at some point he's going to be going back. He wants to. I'd keep him as long as I could. I thought it was pretty interesting hearing that is not what we have heard from Donald Trump to this point. Anything about him having to go, him needing to focus on his company at all. What do you hear in that? What do you think?
Well, remember when this was first announced, the whole Doge entity with Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk at the helm, they said very proudly that all of their work at Doge would be completed by July 4th of 2026, America's 250th birthday. So it was already set in stone that the Doge entity would dissolve by then. So this shouldn't really be as newsworthy, or did the president forget about that it was already set in stone that it was going to end? So I think that's, but really what you could read into that if you wanted to is that he's looking for an escape valve. And so if things don't go well and aren't looking great for 2026, well, Doge should have already been ended by then. So who will he then blame? So I don't know if he's trying to prolong it so that he can then blame him after the midterms. I'm just not sure. But you keep him until November. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But he did initially say that this would be done by July 4th. So
I see a really fun soap opera playing out before our eyes.
The fall will be very interesting in 2026.
Elise Picard, really quick on Tariff Day coming up. The fact that it's still a mystery of what tariffs are about to set in and on what countries, that means what in terms of the real impact and political impact, since that's what we're discussing of this trade war?
A lack of consistency and a lack of competency. But this is what the American people voted for. Listen, I give Donald Trump a lot of hell every time I'm on TV, and rightfully so. But the lone compliment I can give him is that he has been the most honest broker that we've had in recent American history. The reason being is because he told us he was going to do all of these things, and people for some reason assumed that he would forget or otherwise reprioritize or otherwise say that, no, I'm just not going to do it. And so now all of our allies, foes, and friends alike, they just have to sit on pins and needles. And you know who else that affects? That affects your grandmama's Social Security or her retirement that is in the stock market right now that is about to fluctuate depending on what Donald Trump decides to do today. That type of lack of competency, that type of lack of consistency. Oh, you said a quick answer? I'm sorry. That's what Donald Trump is known for.
I never expect a quick answer from you, my long-winded friend. It is good to see you both. Thank you so much, John.